I have been asked time and time again, as recently as on a live stream the other day, what my favorite horror franchises are after Halloween. And I realized that I don't think I've ever done a video on this. So today, I want to give you guys my top 5 horror franchises in order. I'm sure this will go just as you're expecting it to, right? Hey, what is up everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and today I wanted to give you guys my top 5 horror franchises ever, in my opinion. Now, I should say 2 things before I get into this. As I always say when I do any list, this is my list. It does not have to be yours, nor do I expect it to be. Also, this is my 5 favorites. I am not saying these are the 5 best in any particular order. It's just based off of rewatchability for me, how much it means to me, and really sometimes the top end outweighs some of the bad movies in the series, and that top end can make a certain franchise rank very high on my list. So without further ado, let's get right into the madness. Coming in at number 5 is going to be The Evil Dead. Now, this is a franchise that I love dearly, and that is how I feel about all 5 of these franchises. However, The Evil Dead has not had as many installments as most of these other series. Now, if we go 15 years from now and there's 5 more Evil Dead movies, maybe it's going to rank higher, because the Evil Dead franchise is a franchise that does not miss, in my opinion. Every single film in this series has at least been very good. I would say the bottom of the barrel in this series, for me, is honestly probably the original film, and I know that's blasphemy to some, because it is a movie that I love. But this franchise is so strong, it's just like when you have a series full of bangers, one's gotta be last, right? Look, The Evil Dead is a franchise that I do not feel has ever gotten its due from most casual horror fans, which is why I was shocked to see Evil Dead Rise do so well at the box office. I was also incredibly happy to see that happen, because if any series deserved it, it was Evil Dead. Again, when you keep cranking out great movies, eventually people need to start taking notice. I'm really excited to see where this series goes forward, and I really hope that they get over the habit of dropping promising storylines and not following them up. Please, for the love of God, bring Jane Levy back. But Evil Dead's going to come in at number 5 for me. It means too much to me.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
Coming in at number 4 is going to be Child's Play. Now, as you can see behind me and further off screen, I liked the Child's Play movies. I always have, ever since I was a kid. And I remember being a kid and immediately thinking, I was never scared of Chucky. I always thought, dude, I could beat that little doll's ass. Like, I would just punt him. I'd punt him across a field, across a room, whatever. And then as he runs at me again, I'd just wind up, kick him again. But that wasn't really the point. That's not why I loved the series so much. I loved the series so much because I love the character. And I love the campiness of the series as a whole. I just love how over the top it can get sometimes. Now, sometimes it goes a little too far for me, like Cult and Seed, but I understand why people love those movies. It just went a little too far for me in those movies. Having said that, Child's Play 2 and Bride of Chucky, I think walked the line perfectly between like meta comedy and horror, and I think it's a perfect blend. And yes, I even like the remake. This series, I feel like, mostly is incredibly strong. Now, while Evil Dead, I feel like, is stronger from front to back, the highs in the Child's Play franchise are incredibly high. And that starts with Child's Play 2. I think Child's Play 2 is one of the greatest horror films of the 1990s, and I will die on that hill. So, Child's Play, a few years ago, I probably would have put this at number 2 or number 3, but I'm gonna settle it at number 4 right now. Lord knows it'll probably change as time goes on.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut!
Coming in at number 3 is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. Look, I love Freddy Krueger. I have always loved Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is one of the few horror icons that actually did scare me growing up, because the idea that an undead demon could invade my dreams, where was I ever safe? Nowhere. If you go to sleep, you're gonna die. So that terrified me. But it was deeper than that. It was specifically Robert Englund and what he brought to the role. He had the perfect air of menace while also being disgustingly funny. He was terrifying, but you also couldn't take your eyes off of him. And I feel like Robert Englund is what made this series work. I do not think that if he were not Freddy Krueger, this series would have ever been anything. Maybe, a hit here and there, maybe 2, 3 films, but it would not have spanned generations like it has up to this point. A Nightmare on Elm Street is also a series that I have a very unorthodox ranking of. Most people would say either the original or Dream Warriors is their favorite. I happen to prefer Dream Master and Freddy's Revenge to both of those movies. But even then, I would say my top 5 in this series, I love all of those movies. And even the back half, I find a lot of enjoyment in. Freddy's Revenge is my favorite, and that movie alone is enough to put this entire series at number 3 for me.
Please, God.
This is God.
Now, this is where the shock and surprise is going to come from. This is where people are going to go, wait, what? But I have marinated on this for years, and I have settled on this. My number 2 horror franchise is Hellraiser. Now, I understand. When you hear Hellraiser, you probably immediately think about all of the straight-to-DVD terrible sequels. And you're not wrong in thinking that initially, because that's kind of what the franchise became for the better part of 20 years. Having said that, though, the first 4 movies in this series, and the reboot specifically, are way more than enough for me to put this where I put it. Look, my favorite movie in this series is Hellbound. I think Hellbound is absolutely incredible. It is this weird fever dream while also being absolutely disgusting. And Ashley Lawrence truly comes into her own in this movie. This movie is a nightmare in and of itself. The imagery, the dialogue, I absolutely adore this movie. Hellraiser, the original, I mean, come on. It broke barriers. You didn't see movies like this in the States at that time. This kind of subject matter to be released nationwide, was not something that was all that common at the time. This movie was really, really weird. This movie pushed the limits of what you expected from like slasher movies, because Hellraiser isn't a slasher movie, but he always kind of got grouped in there, Pinhead did, but it's so much deeper than that. But Hellraiser was a shock to the system. Hell on Earth, while it tonally doesn't really fit with the first 2 movies, it is a freaking blast. It turns Pinhead into more of a slasher, and it's just kind of fun. Like, narratively speaking, does it make all that much sense when compared to the first 2? No. But I love the third act of this movie because it's absolutely batshit balls to the wall insane, and that stigmata scene alone is just worth the price of admission. And then Hellraiser Bloodline is a movie that I'm so glad to see get revisited because it really is a great, great movie. The space stuff isn't great, but that's because the technology wasn't there and the script wasn't as polished as they needed it to be. This, like Halloween 6, ironically enough with Joe Chappelle, was kind of a mess behind the scenes. Having said that though, the first 2 acts of this movie are incredible, and I urge anybody that disagrees to go back and watch this movie and try to put the space stuff out of your mind, and everything else from the past to the present day is incredible. And the reboot. I love the reboot. I think the reboot is incredible. I want to see them continue to do movies in this new timeline with Jamie Clayton back as Pinhead. I loved that reboot. One of my favorite horror reboots. And even the drudge there in the middle of the Infernos and the Deaders. Look, Deader, I think, is a solid movie for 2/3 of the movie, and then the back half falls apart because they tried to shoehorn a bunch of Cenobites into it. Doesn't really make much sense. And I think Hellworld, although it is incredibly stupid, it's kind of a fun slasher. I don't know. Overall, though, the 5 movies that I mentioned by name and kind of went through, those 5 movies alone are enough to put this at number 2. They just mean way, way too much to me. I think that the highs are incredibly high. I think Hellbound might be my favorite 80s horror film. That's how much I like that movie.
Explorers in the further regions of experience, demons to some.
And if there were any suspense leading up to this point, there no longer is any suspense. You guys know my favorite franchise is Halloween. Look, there isn't a movie in this series that I don't like aside from Resurrection. And having said that, I understand why it's a guilty pleasure for some people and they find fun in it, but I've just never been able to get behind this movie. Having said that, every other movie in this series I either quite like or absolutely adore. And I think that my top 5 in this series are some of my favorite movies ever. So with that being the case, how could Halloween not be number 1? You guys were not even waiting for this. You knew it was coming, so you shouldn't be surprised at all. But I want to hear down below what your guys' 5 favorite horror franchises are. And I know a lot of you are probably going, oh my God, you didn't mention Scream. No, I really didn't. Look, I have a lot of nostalgia for most of these series, and they span back further than Scream. They've been a part of my life longer. So I just feel like Scream's right there on the precipice, but it didn't make the cut. But I want to hear what your guys's are down below. Make sure to leave a like, comment again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.